This video, bit of a different one, wanting to start up a new series. There's a lot of people, a lot of you wanting to grow food for self-sufficiency. It's something that I've been focusing a little bit more on this channel. So I thought actually I could create a series at the start of each month, kind of from February until October, sharing what to sow in each particular month for self-sufficiency. So this isn't just going to be the kind of crops that give you loads of food, which of course is something that we need, but I'm also going to make sure that there's space for crops which really pack a lot of punch in terms of flavour. So it's going to be a real mix between the two, and I am going to be leaving some crops out. You might watch some other like what to sow in March videos and think, wait, he hasn't mentioned those. I haven't mentioned those for a reason, because I'm just thinking about the crops that, from kind of my perspective, what I feel make the biggest difference in terms of saving money by growing food from our own garden and also enjoying that. So feel free to kind of tailor and pick and choose whatever I recommend to suit your needs and your goals. We're talking about February here. It is still very much winter. In fact, winter often goes until the end of March for us here. So that means no sowing outside. It's going to be a focus on things that you can start off in pots and modules. And I'll just give a little shameless plug for the HR10 and the HR20. These are my module trays. They're available over at hughesgarden.com. Also in America, we've got other container-wise trays. They're selling out quite fast, so hurry before we end up sending over another shipment, which might take about 4 to 6 weeks. All right, the first crop is something that I adore, and it's a fairly recent discovery. It is field beans. So field beans are like broad beans, but they're smaller. However, they seem to produce, from what I found, they seem to produce more beans per plant, and when I've been weighing up the two in terms of beans, field beans have been more productive. Now, the other reason why I mentioned field beans is that I found these to be, so far, a lot more hardy overwintering, because something that we really struggle with is a hungry gap, and if we're thinking in terms of self-sufficiency, we want to make sure that we can stretch out harvests and stretch out the ability to come up and get food from the garden for as much of the season as possible. So over our other site, we've got some field beans, and we've had quite a bad winter, more cold weather than usual, and about 4 weeks of non-stop persistent rain. Those are still absolutely fine and dandy. And what we'll end up probably getting is a harvest around late May. You can, of course, start off broad beans, but if I was saying if there's one thing that you want to start off at the start of February in deep module trays, you don't want these, you want a deeper module tray. You can start them off in loo roll tubes as well. Then field beans are fantastic. You can also eat the tops as well. They serve as a really nice green. And because it's such a great vegetable, I am going to be doing a dedicated video about them soon, so stay tuned for that. The next one is, again, it's a bit of a favourite, of course, it's tomatoes. Often I start them around late February to early March, just because I can't really be bothered with grow lights. I am going to be starting them off earlier in hotbeds, which is going to be quite nice. However, if you do have grow lights, or if you do have a particularly sunny windowsill, then in the first half of February it's a great time to start off your tomato seeds. Now there's loads of great resources out there on how to grow tomatoes, but I want to kind of highlight 3 particular varieties that I absolutely adored last year. One is Green Zebra. It looks stunning, it is so productive, and it tastes incredible. A very similar one is Tigerella. Tigerella is quickly becoming a firm favourite for so many gardeners. And another one which was a bit of a surprise to me, because I can't remember how I got them. I think there's a local garden centre and they were trying to get rid of kind of half dead looking tomato plants, and I thought I'll give them a try. They were yellow tumbling Tom cherry tomatoes, and out of all of the roast tomato sauces that I've made for pasta, those yellow cherry tomatoes were divine. Another useful thing about the tumbling cherry tomatoes is that they're utilising a very different space within the polytunnel. Usually we've got the vine tomatoes growing up. However, the tumbling tomatoes allow us to grow over the sides of the beds within polytunnels, thus allowing us to maximise how much food we can get within the same growing area. Next up is onions. You have a choice of either starting them from seed. I know, I think it's a variety, Alicia Craig, a very popular one to start from seed. Something I'm going to be starting off in hotbeds. Another thing you can do, which is usually how I start the majority of my onions, is actually by growing onion sets. They're a really easy way to start off in modules, 1 onion set per cell. And because onions are so hardy, it's something that you can do in a polytunnel in February. And kind of by the end of March, you can be planting them outside in your raised beds after you've hardened them off for just 2 or 3 days. The thing as well about onions, I've done some calculations. You could estimate to get around 12 kilos of onions per square metre spacing. I've got a chart up there just to show you how I've worked that out off my own average yields. But the other great thing is that you have the leaves of onions. These leaves, I've seen Liz Zorab do this quite a bit. You chop them up, you can freeze them, they freeze down really well. And it's another way of being able to use onions over the winter months, and they store well as well. If you're curious what kind of onion set variety I'm going for, usually I'm always going to grow Struon, and then I'll just chuck in a few other things just to see what happens. Peas, we all love peas. You know, the fact that in February we can start both tomatoes and peas, that is always going to put a big smile on my face. I love both of them in kind of equal measures. If you're thinking about trying to be as time efficient as possible, if you're growing your usual kind of garden peas, then you've got to spend a lot of time podding. And that's of course something that you're very welcome to do. But one thing that I discovered last year was just how much I like Oregon sugar snap peas. The thing that's so nice about them is that you can just top and tail them and they are ready to eat. You don't need to pod them, you can eat the pod as well. And you can also blanch them, and because they're kind of fairly flat, you can pack down quite a lot in a small space to then freeze. So Oregon sugar snap peas get a big plus from me. I'm sure many of you have seen a recent video that was titled, I think it was the easiest crop that anyone can grow, and it's about Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes. And in February is a great month to plant their tubers because by March they'll start to send out sprouts. So just any point during February, source some tubers, plant them out, and yeah, give that video a watch because it's quite remarkable just how productive they are. Next up is just almost any type of summer cabbage. The thing that's nice about summer cabbage is that it grows pretty quickly, and you can either harvest it whether you go for like the outer leaves or you can allow it to heart up. But a cabbage, it's such a dense thing that if you kind of roast it, or I love to char grill cabbage, it's just a nice easy thing to do. Now if you've got a really small garden, perhaps think about growing something like a tree cabbage, so you can utilise a bit more of the area and it can be a bit more of a permanent feature. But over the years there's been a kind of a bit more of a growing soft spot in my heart for summer cabbages, and I just want to throw them in. Next one is cauliflower. There are 2 great varieties to sow. One is Candid Charm. This matures really quickly. And if you just want a bog standard variety that's going to give you the results, then All Year Round is another one. Cauliflower, it does grow surprisingly quickly. And the reason why I've added this into the list is not only can you obviously eat the florets, it adds such nice flavour. One of the nicest things that I've made recently was a cauliflower puree. I roasted cauliflower, cooked down some onions, put it in a pan, put a bit of stock just up to the level, and I blitzed it, and it was one of the most delicious things I've had for a long time. The leaves of cauliflower are also edible, giving you another yield. Just before I go into the last one, it's a good recommendation if you're wanting to grow aubergines or eggplants to sow the seeds this month as early as possible. They do need quite a long season to mature, I'm more of a person that likes to cheat. I will just buy a few black beauty plants, just as small seedlings, grow them on. They seem to do really well. Last year we had more aubergines than we could have possibly imagined from a surprisingly few plants. The last crop is radish. This might not feel particularly exciting, but there's a few reasons why I've put it on the list. Firstly, if you're new to gardening, this is going to be the first harvest that you're going to get from your space. So you're going to get that kind of sense of achievement under your belt, and that, honestly, it does wonders. The other thing about radish is that you've got that freshness, you've got that crunch, but you've also got the ability to allow it to grow, to naturally run to seed, because radish flowers and the green radish seed pods are also edible. So from one plant, there's actually 3 types of harvest that you can get. February still, as I said before, is very much winter here, so don't go too crazy on the sowing to begin with. But one thing you do want to be making sure that you're doing is finishing off your planting plan for the 2023 growing season, because by far that's going to make the biggest difference in terms of how much food you can get from the garden. And this video here, in case you haven't seen it, is going to show you the 10 steps that anyone can use to create a planting plan that is going to help guide you through a really successful and joyful season.